What's that?
This here's a roof rack made out of the finest quality aluminum. Doesn't look too sturdy right about now, but hopefully with some adjustments, hopefully it'll work. Hello everyone, welcome to part 4 of our shuttle bus build. It is good to have you with us once again. As you can see, things are really starting to heat up here in the bus in terms of things we have added to the bus. And as always, if you're new here, make sure you go on back and check out our previous videos so you know what we're talking about when we reference things from the past.
After filming part 3, one of the very next things that we installed was our solar roof rack. This is a project that we started planning and installing back in April, which was the same month that we started our conversion process. So it's been a really long time coming, but in this past month we were finally able to get those panels up on the roof.
We originally had some pretty ambitious plans for the solar rack itself. We wanted it to actually lift using actuators so that you could get the most out of your panels based on the angle of the sun.
We got really close.
We got very close. like depressingly close to the point that it's really sad that we couldn't make that happen.
I think it was a materials choice that ended up putting the nail in the coffin for that project. We have the actuators, we had the hinge on the rack, we had it lifting really nicely on the ground. But as it turns out, the aluminum that we constructed the rack out of is a little bit too thin to support the full weight of the panels when they're being, lifted into the air. So unfortunately, because of the flexibility of that metal, it was never going to lift the way that we needed it to. So we had to choose to make the rack a static feature.
There are countless ways that people go about mounting solar to the roofs of their builds. In our last van, we had simply just screwed the panels straight into the roof, nice and simple. In this build though, we wanted to take an approach that involved drilling as few holes in the roof as possible, and also use a method that allows us to avoid struggling with the curve that we have in our roof. We decided to go with custom gutter mount brackets to mount the solar rack. We have gutters running along each side of this bus that are riveted in place, so we felt secure to use these as mounting points for the solar rack itself. I made the brackets out of 1/8 inch thick steel flat bar, which I bent at an angle so that when the brackets are in place on the roof, the rack has a flat surface to sit on. I then got some C-channel and cut it to size, drilled a hole through the C-channel and the bracket, got a bolt with a lock nut, and then used the bolt to clamp the C-channel to the bracket with the gutter pinched in between there so that it was a really strong hold and that bracket was held in place by the C-channel. For the rack itself, we wanted something that was light but durable, but also weather resistant. So we decided to go with aluminum. I went to Home Depot and picked up some 1-inch square aluminum tubing and some aluminum angle. I then cut the aluminum angle into 1-inch pieces, which I would use as sort of corner brackets to join all of the rack together using pop rivets. When it came time to actually mounting our rack to our brackets, one thing that we had to be conscious of is galvanic corrosion. Our rack is made of aluminum and our brackets are made of steel. So mixing those two dissimilar metals actually can cause one of the metals to corrode and potentially fail. One thing we did to mitigate this is adding buffers between any metals that were not the same metal. This was just as a general safety precaution to keep everything from not corroding.
It's a nice rack you got there.
Why, thank you.
What you doing?
Got a rubber, this little rubber thingy, and that's gonna go in between the rack and the bracket itself to keep the aluminum from touching the steel. There's a little plastic shoulder washers that are gonna go in the hole on top and bottom of this, which will keep this stainless steel bolt from coming in contact with the aluminum rack when it sits in the hole. Cool. Just gotta stave off that galvanic corrosion, you know what I'm saying?
Got to.
We have 6 200-watt panels on our roof for a total of 1,200 watts of solar. These 6 panels are from Rich Solar, and they are 24-volt panels instead of the usual 12, but we have an MPPT charge controller to go with them, and this style of controller allows the voltage to be stepped down to 12 volts, which is the voltage that our batteries will accept. These panels are situated on the outer edges of the rack so that down the middle our 3 roof vents can still function and open normally, and then the 2 rows of 3 panels each sit on either side. These panels are also just pop riveted into the rack to tie it all together. Also on our rack is our Weboost cell signal antenna. We had a portable version of this in our old van, and I wanted so badly to have a permanently mounted antenna in our new build because we go to a lot of remote places and cell service is paramount. So this antenna hooks up to a receiver on the inside of the bus and allows us to boost our cell signal no matter where we travel. Things we got to work on was installing some of our finished pieces, which is really exciting. So one of those first components is some pieces of beadboard to cover some of the existing plywood structures in the bus. So our back wall, where our air conditioner is located over the bed, we have a massive piece of beadboard to cover all of those seams from the plywood that we kind of pieced together there. We also installed beadboard in the area that's kind of next to our entry door and this little end piece of countertop that will soon be installed. In this area is also what I call the control panel, which is where we got to install a lot of the things that operate appliances for us in the bus. So this includes our water heater thermostat, our Propex heater thermostat, our water pump switch, and our Victron battery monitor. So from here it allows us to control pretty much any of the main appliances in the bus, and it kind of brings it to life.
Next, we moved on to finishing all of the cabinetry that we have in the bus. We added one massive overhead cabinet across from the kitchen space, and we added our third and final overhead cabinet, which is situated at the head of our bed. And then the last cabinet that we built is situated at the foot of our bed and spans the entire width of the bed itself. It's divided into 3 big sections, one section for clothes for me, one section for clothes for Jess, and then a third sort of miscellaneous section to house sort of odds and ends. One important feature of this cabinet in that third section is that we included a space to have a laundry chute. One aspect that is often overlooked when designing layouts for buses and vans and things like that is a space to put dirty laundry. So in this third section of this cabinet at the foot of our bed, we dedicated a little space that runs all the way to the floor where we can hang a laundry bag that can then be accessed through our back door. We thought this would be a good use of the space that would otherwise kind of be underutilized, and it addresses a problem that we kind of didn't have an answer for until now.
Around this time, I got to installing one of the last major components of our electrical system, and that is our Renogy 20 amp DC to DC charger. In our old van, we had our batteries hooked up directly to our van's alternator via an isolator to prevent battery drain, and this was a super effective and easy way to charge our house batteries off of our engine battery. But with lithium batteries, it's not as safe of a method and it can damage them in the long term. So we went with a route that would be a little bit more protective for those batteries. So this DC to DC charger is hooked up partially to our house batteries, and then the other end is connected to our starter batteries. The charger is supposed to be attached to an ignition circuit in the bus so that it turns on every time the bus turns on and charges your batteries right away. I, however, didn't necessarily want it to be an automatic process. I wanted some control over whether or not the charger was running. So I actually took the wire that was supposed to be for the ignition circuit, and I tapped it into one of our old wiring circuits from when the bus was a prison bus and had all of the interior lights running along the outer edges of the vehicle inside itself. So this way there's actually a switch on the dashboard which reads interior lights but now actually turns our DC to DC charger on and off. One of the other really big projects we accomplished over the last few weeks was installing our ceiling. This is a project that totally changed the look of the bus and really made me feel like we're starting to round the corner towards the finish line. So our ceiling is constructed out of cedar tongue and groove planks. So these planks all connect in tongue and groove style and they create a really nice cohesive finish when they're installed. So to do the actual install, we used a construction adhesive on the back of each plank, and then we brad nailed it into place along the furring strips at, predetermined lengths along the ceiling where we had laid them when we did the initial furring strip install. One of the other things that we got to do during this process was install our lighting. So we have 2 sets of 4 puck lights that are installed into the ceiling. They are 12-volt lights. To do this, I just took a hole saw and cut holes into each plank that we wanted a light to go in. And then the installation process is super simple. Just attach the wires with wire nuts and the lights just kind of pop into place. So we got to turn the lights on in the bus for the first time very recently, and that was extremely gratifying.
One of the other things we installed in our ceiling are actually high-powered magnets that would serve as mounting points for our projector and projector screen. We installed these magnets in 2 different sections of the bus. The first section allows for the screen to pull down at the foot of our bed, and the second section allows for the screen to pull down sort of in the front of the bus, and it just allowed for a little bit more versatility in terms of where we can set up our projector and screen. We wish we could take credit for this ingenious projector setup idea, but it is one, along with several other things in this bus, that we borrowed from our friends Savannah and Drew at Our Way to Rome. We've known Savannah and Drew for a very, very long time, and we got to spend quite a bit of time in their bus this winter. Just seeing this projector setup was something that we thought was so ingenious that we had to incorporate it into our build as well. So thank you to Savannah and Drew for coming up with this awesome idea. If you're viewing our channel and somehow have not come across Our Way to Rome's channel, I'm not exactly sure how that's possible, but make sure you go check them out. They have such great videos on how to build so many awesome things, and if you're really into this bus building stuff, they are a wealth of knowledge. And if you want to include this magnetic projector setup in your build, we will put a link to plans that they created in the description below, so you can add this awesome, ingenious idea to your build.
So as many of you know, our bus was previously a prison bus in its former life, and one of the relics of that life was still living on the exterior of the vehicle. You could actually see the writing that used to be on the bus before we purchased it pretty clearly in almost all lighting. And that's not really a look that we were trying to keep for ourselves, so one of the next big projects we had to undertake was painting the exterior of the bus. As much as I wanted to maybe do a cool color or something a little bit more artistic, we decided just to simply repaint the affected panels in the same kind of white that the rest of the bus already is, to make it easy and just to erase the lettering, essentially. We did what is affectionately called the poor man's paint job to the exterior of our bus. So this involves very affordable supplies and regular Rust-Oleum enamel paint for the top coat. We started by sanding the affected panels of the bus for a very long time, taking off all of the visible lettering and getting it, past the initial top coat so that we had something for our primer and paint to stick to. We then taped off all of the things that we didn't want painted, and then we first applied a layer of Rust-Oleum fillable sandable automotive primer. This kind of filled in any of the gaps and small divots that were in the existing frame of the bus and allowed it to give it a really, robust surface for the paint to stick to. We applied this paint and all the layers of paint on the bus with a $50 Amazon electric paint sprayer. After we put down 2 layers of primer, which dried really quickly, that same afternoon we were able to go ahead with 2 layers of top coat. We used matte white Rust-Oleum enamel paint. It's the kind you can get at Home Depot. We thinned it out with some acetone, put it in the paint sprayer, and just went to town. And it took probably a half an hour to spray each side. It's, again, really not that complicated. And now that it's dry, the lettering is completely gone, and the bus looks nicer than it's looked since we bought it, I think. One of our most recently completed projects is our couch. So in our last van, we didn't really have any place to sit that wasn't our bed. We had a small booth, but it wasn't really a comfortable sitting size. So when we started doing this build from the very beginning, I have been very passionate about having a big, comfortable, like over-the-top couch that is somewhere we can hang out and even, have people over and have room for people to sit. And I think we managed to do all of that in this one. Because of how much real estate our couch takes up in this bus, we wanted to make sure that it could do a bunch of different things and be really multi-purpose. So our couch is situated in an L shape, with the end of the L sitting right at the end of our bed, so that kind of serves as a step into the bed. Then all of the sections of the couch have the slatted design that is very popular in a lot of van and bus builds, so that the pieces can slide out and turn into different configurations. So the piece closest to our bed slides out for what we call bench mode, so that when the projector screen is hanging towards the front of the bus, you can seat 2 people on the bench and play video games, watch the game, whatever you want. The far side of the couch also pulls out to the same level of the static L, which creates C couch mode, so that our table, when it's mounted here, will be able to be in the center, and you can kind of seat people around it, and it kind of serves as like a dinette. And then this third section that we're sitting on here also pulls out so that when you take the table down, you have what we call bed mode, so that the full length of the couch is roughly the size of a twin size bed. Each section of the couch that is slatted also has hinges on it, so that these sections can lift up, so you can fully access both storage spaces under some of these areas and then also the bulk of our electrical system under the rest of the areas. So there's full and complete access to all of the components that I will definitely need access to. The middle section of the couch was kind of a challenge to design because we wanted the vents from our heater as well as a 12 volt and 110 outlet and the mount for our Lagoon table mount to all exist in this space, which means that the pieces on top needed to slide out, but the panel underneath needed to stay static. The solution that we came up with was to have the slats come out attached to posts rather than the entire panel like the other 2 sections have. So the center panel is totally static and stays exactly in the position that it was designed to be in, and then those posts slide out kind of in between the other 2 sections so that we have that full, bed mode extension without disturbing all of the delicate electrical wiring and ventilation. One of the other things that I think is unique to us a little bit in this design is the back that we added to this couch. If you've been following along, you know by now that our walls are curved, and as far as sitting goes, it makes it a little bit uncomfortable to lean up against the wall. It kind of pushes your head forward, and it's not super comfortable. So we decided to add a full residential height back to the couch. And it's also sloped slightly backwards so that it feels like you're sitting on a real, couch in a house. It's not an RV couch. It feels comfortable. And that was the goal, and I think we achieved it. that is where we are going to leave you for this part of our video series. We are in the middle of some really exciting, big final projects for this build. We are priming, we are making paint selections, I'm working on the shower, Greg is building cabinet and closet doors. It's all really exciting stuff, and it all points to us coming into the real home stretch of this build finally. So thanks so much for watching and for following along with us on this crazy process. If you haven't already, please do like and subscribe so we can keep making videos like this for you guys. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.